This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers named Emily Carter, and I wanted to share it on the channel. This incident took place in the summer of 2023. I had just transferred with my company to take on a new position in a major Midwestern city. My spouse was still working and living back in California for a few more months, so I rented a small studio apartment for myself in a newly renovated building located in a popular downtown neighborhood. It wasn't large, but it was comfortable, secure, and had a nice downstairs lobby. I was one of the first tenants to move into the building, and over time, more residents began to fill the other units. One of the perks of this move was that I was now only a few hours' drive from my hometown and my parents. Everything was going well, my new job was great, my neighborhood was lively, and the people in my building mostly kept to themselves, just like I did. But then a new tenant moved in across the hall and everything changed. We'll call him David. David was a single man in his 60s, quite different from the younger professionals and college students who made up most of the building. I noticed his strange behavior almost immediately. Many evenings when I came home from work, he would be sitting in his car in the parking lot, staring blankly into the distance. That summer, we were dealing with heavy smoke drifting down from the Canadian wildfires, leaving a fine layer of ash on our cars. David became convinced that someone was deliberately spraying his car with this dust and began accusing random tenants he met in the parking lot. Soon, his behavior escalated. He started hoarding trash in his apartment and leaving garbage bags in the hallway, creating a terrible odor. Sometimes I would hear him yelling at himself late at night. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore and complained to the leasing office. The building manager brushed it off, saying she had been inside his apartment and everything seemed fine. In August, my parents were celebrating their 50th anniversary, and I was looking forward to spending the weekend with them. Unfortunately, just days before the trip, my boss told me he would be flying in for an important project that required us to work through the weekend. I was disappointed and felt guilty for missing such a milestone, but I managed to take a short overnight trip midweek to see my parents before returning for work. The morning after that visit, as I was getting ready to drive back, I checked my email and saw a message from my apartment manager. The subject line mentioned an incident that had occurred the night before. The email was vague, only stating that a resident had died and more information would follow. My heart sank. I immediately thought of David. I opened a local news app on my phone, and the top story confirmed my fears. There had been a deadly standoff at my apartment building the night before. According to the report, David had approached my next-door neighbor in the hallway with a gun and threatened to shoot him. The neighbor managed to escape back into his apartment and called 911. Shockingly, David also called 911, claiming that his neighbors were hacking his phone and threatened to kill everyone in the building if police didn't arrive. When officers showed up, David barricaded himself inside his apartment and began firing a rifle out the window at anyone he saw in the parking lot below. The SWAT team was called in, and everyone on my floor was trapped in their units, forced to hide and barricade themselves against the gunfire. Across the street in a neighboring building, a police sniper took position with a direct view into David's window. After several tense minutes, the sniper fired a single shot. The bullet struck David, and when police flew a drone into his apartment to confirm, they found him dead, still clutching his gun. Miraculously, no one else was injured. When I returned later that day, I found the building riddled with bullet holes, and my neighbors standing outside, hugging, crying, and showing each other videos they had recorded during the terrifying standoff. People who had barely spoken before were now clinging to each other in relief. I've never felt so lucky to have been away that night. Had my boss not canceled my weekend plans, I could have easily been one of the people trapped inside. I still feel sorry for David. Clearly, he was someone who needed serious help, but the danger he posed was unimaginable. That night could have ended much worse. Thank you to Emily Carter for sending in this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in, and it might be featured next. This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers named Daniel Brooks, and I wanted to share it on the channel. When I was growing up, a lot of bad things happened to me, and I eventually ended up in foster care. Technically, it wasn't even a proper home at first. It was more like a holding place where kids stayed until they could be placed somewhere permanent. I was a hurt and untrusting kid, and I went through quite a few different families over the years. One of the earlier homes I stayed in was with a single man who was severely overweight. I don't remember much about him, but I remember the house feeling wrong. The air always felt heavy, and I never felt safe. My case manager must have sensed something too, because not long after, I was moved again. That's when I met the family, more specifically, the man this story is really about. I think I was around 8 or 10 years old. There were 6 of us in that house: my foster mother, foster father, 2 brothers, a sister, and me. At first, it felt almost normal. The brothers treated me kindly, we played together all the time, and they made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere. The only person I didn't get along with was my foster sister. From the very beginning, she seemed to despise me for existing. You know that feeling when someone's hatred is so strong you can almost feel it in the air? That's what it was like with her. I guess I can't say I helped much either. I was mouthy, defensive, always ready to push back. But she looked at me like I was some sort of intruder, a disease that had infected her home. The family had one strange thing in their house: an old intercom system. It connected every room, and my foster mother mostly used it at night to tell us to go to bed. The sound of that crackling speaker became something I dreaded. I can still hear it. A few months later, summer came around, and they had been promising to teach me how to swim. They had a pool in the backyard with a slide that dropped right into the deep end. I was terrified of water. I'd never learned to swim, but I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of the family. That day, everything felt off, but I couldn't explain why. Everyone kept encouraging me to try the slide. They said they'd catch me, that they wouldn't let anything bad happen. I hesitated for a long time, but eventually I gave in. I climbed the ladder, took a deep breath, and slid down. The moment I hit the water, panic set in. I didn't know which way was up or how to move. The water filled my nose and throat, and I started thrashing, desperate for air. Seconds felt like minutes. Just when I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, someone grabbed me, my foster father. But instead of pulling me out, he held me just above the surface, one hand gripping my arm tightly. If I had to describe his face in that moment, I'd say it was a twisted mix of lust and contempt. His eyes were cold, and his mouth curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'll never forget it. He said, "I could let you drown right now, boy." Those words cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. He'd never called me boy before, not once. I cried, gasped, begged him to let me go, but he just held me there, staring, as if deciding whether I deserved to live. After what felt like forever, he finally dragged me out and dropped me onto the concrete beside the pool. I just lay there, shivering and crying. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even look at him. That night, unbelievably, we all went out to a Mexican restaurant like nothing had happened. Everyone laughed and talked as if the afternoon had been perfectly normal. I sat there silent, too terrified to say a word. Maybe to them it was nothing. Maybe that kind of cruelty was normal in their house. But to me, it was the day I realized that not all monsters hide in the dark.
Some wear smiles, call themselves family, and hold your life in their hands just to see how far they can push you. Soon after, I told my case manager what had happened. Within a few days, I was gone from that house for good. To anyone listening who has parents that care about them, please don't take that for granted. Some of us never had that kind of love.
This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers named Jason Miller, and I wanted to share it on the channel. I grew up in a small, Southern California town, once known for its endless orange groves. Those groves have long since disappeared, replaced by housing developments and shopping centers. But when I was growing up in the 90s, there were still a few left standing. My friend Johnny and I used to get into all kinds of trouble back then. Just your typical mischievous kids with too much freedom and not enough supervision. But there was one day that stands out in my memory, one that still makes my stomach turn whenever I think about it. Looking back, I truly believe Johnny and I almost became victims of a child abductor. If you grew up in the 90s, you know it was a different time. Kids were allowed to roam freely, riding bikes miles from home, with parents having no idea where we were or who we were with. But it was also a time when kidnappings seemed to be on the news every week. I can remember several times strange men tried to lure me with candy or asked me to help look for a lost cat. My usual response was that I'd go check with my mom first, and by the time she came out ready to raise hell, the creep was always gone. Anyway, one afternoon after school, Johnny and I were wandering through an orange grove near his house, just being our usual reckless selves. We were pulling metal lids off the irrigation channels and tossing them around when we suddenly heard a sharp whistle. We both froze. About 25 feet away stood a man staring right at us. He was wagging his finger and making a tisk-tisk sound. At first, I thought he might be a farmer or a worker from the grove, but then I noticed his grin. It stretched across his face in a way that didn't seem right. It wasn't angry. It was hungry. That grin has stayed with me all these years. Johnny and I stood still for a few seconds, too stunned to move. Then Johnny whispered, "Run!" I looked back toward the man, and he was already sprinting toward us, full speed. Even as he ran, that awful grin never left his face. We bolted. I don't think I've ever run faster in my life. Branches tore at our clothes as we pushed through the thick rows of trees. I could hear the man's heavy footsteps getting closer for a few moments, and then silence. We burst out of the grove and didn't stop running until we reached Johnny's house. When we looked back, he was gone. We didn't tell anyone. We tried to distract ourselves by playing Nintendo 64. Johnny's family had just gotten one. And within an hour, the whole thing felt like a bad dream. A few days later, Johnny's mom took us out to get donuts. As we were waiting in line, we both noticed a wanted poster on the wall. It showed a sketch of a man wanted for attempting to abduct a young boy outside a nearby school. The blood drained from my face. The sketch looked exactly like the man from the grove. Johnny and I locked eyes, and without saying a word, we both silently agreed never to talk about it. I don't know why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe we thought no one would believe us. Or maybe we were just kids trying to bury something too terrifying to process. We never spoke of it again. Now, as an adult with a family of my own, I often think back to how easily that day could have ended differently. There were so many close calls in my childhood that could have gone wrong, and this one still haunts me the most. I trust no one because of it. And even now, decades later, I still find myself looking over my shoulder, just in case someone, somewhere, is still grinning in the dark. Thank you to Jason Miller for sending in this chilling story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next.